There we go. So welcome to 2026. Welcome to Matthew figuring out how to press the mute button. You know what it's like. You have the mute button on because you want to make sure that you don't make some accidental sounds, and then you forget to turn it on when you need it on. So that is all fun and games for us here. Don't remember, not remembering, because I want you to remember that you can ask questions in the chat. Go ahead, post those away. And welcome to 2026. Welcome to another Go Narrative Friday afternoon homepage teardown, where we pick some poor unsuspecting company in the world of Series A, post Series A, that might sometimes be Series B, sometimes something else interesting, as we saw last year. And we have a look at their best foot forward on the internet. Our website's still that, isn't it? No matter what fancy social media we have, no matter what AI we're using, there's still something being served by the homepage, and that's okay. That's totally fine. You know, we still have offices, we still have computers. They've evolved and they've changed over time. And the web has evolved. The web has changed over time, hasn't it? Just think about what it was like 20 years ago when we were saying Happy New Year in 2005, when it was just starting to move to Web 2.0, if I'm not mistaken. And each step brings with it new things. But as we know about being human and doing business, there's still basics that are true. And that's why I've always been so drawn to communication and narrative and story and business, because these are all things as old as we are, right? From a human perspective. And by taking a look at that best foot forward on the web, we can get an idea on how that company is trying to communicate with investors, customers, and partners as well. 2026, the big push, the big deal for Go Narrative in 2026 is we are laser focused on helping founders, post Series A founders solve some big challenges. And as we know, again, some of the truths of business is it takes all sorts of tools, doesn't it? Right? Even doing a webcast, you've got a camera, you've got a microphone, you've got an internet connection and a computer, of course. And business is always like that. There's always multiple tools. And sometimes we don't have the right tool. So this year we are laser focused on helping connect those dots between what some really important pains are for companies and for founders and for leadership in those companies, and how you can remove or reduce that challenge in some really exciting ways with narrative. So if you turned up to hear about story or storytelling and how to be a better storyteller, you're not going to get that today. That's not what we're doing. As much as I love storytelling, as much as we've built things in the past, like the Storytelling for Action playbook, 2026 is the year of the narrative. That core spine to how you communicate your business inside and outside of your business. And as a founder who finds himself dealing with things like preparing for the next round of funding or adding that new product, service, expansion, right? And that expansion could also be into other markets, right? Or it could be, are we trying to scale the choices and the options that you have with us in our product? We've all seen that, haven't we? My wife was telling me that apparently Netflix are now going to be doing podcasts, right? So scaling the choices within Netflix, right? Or it could be forcing a wedge, right? This is the best way to do X, Y, or Z, and we are the people here to help. So it could be that as well. And then public commitments. That could be around things you're doing in the press, things you're doing with keynotes. And of course, all of this adds to the meta of your business, which is selling what you've got, that trade and value. And all of these things and more, but all of these things bring with them a friction. And importantly, when it comes to how you as the founder of your firm are communicating today, as opposed to how you were doing it 20 employees ago, is really important. And it's a big difference and it's a big friction. When there's 5, 10, 20 people, you are in every room, most likely. And you are the narrative spine of your company. But as you start to push into that 40, 50, definitely 50 to 70 employees, you simply can't be in the room every time a decision is made, every time a customer conversation is had, every time an investor conversation is had. You're probably still pretty involved in those. You've got to have to pick and choose. Your time, your energy is limited and is valuable. Where are you putting that energy, right? If you're looking to expand into new markets or executing on a go-to-market shift or changing who you're, well, adding to your ideal customer profile as you're able to serve more markets, as you're able to build that financial engine of your business and expand out. And all the classic lessons that we've all heard about startups. As you're doing those things, those are in addition to everything else that's happening. And you have to choose where you're spending your valuable energy. Yet at the same time, you want to make sure that everybody is headed in the same direction. We have countless metaphors and anecdotes for this, don't we? I mean, it's all the horses pulling in one direction, right? You want to make sure that your team and your team's energy are channeled into the way that you as a leader know it needs to happen. Now, you hire smart people to make smart decisions and to run tough things, but they are subservient to the strategy of the business, and you still hold the keys to that kingdom. That may change over time. You may take a back seat. You may choose to focus more on product. You may choose to focus more on the technical side of the business. You may choose to spend more time finding out how to engage communities. There's all sorts of things that can happen down the road, but today that is still very much the case. And being able to scale yourself is a magic trick, not a parlor trick, but a magic trick that if you can pull it off, it's going to set you up for success. Because when you do it, all that energy continues to head in that direction that you want it to be heading in. So that's what I'm obsessed with. That's what Go Narrative is obsessed with this year, is helping with that. And there's 3 triggers, if you will, that we see. There's legibility, right? Is it understandable? Is it understandable as when you've got the 10 minutes to talk about it? Is it understandable in the elevator pitch, right? And one of the things that's great with these streams is having a little bit of music in the background as well. So we're going to go ahead and try that. And one of the things we have spent a lot of time on in the tech industry is encryption, encoding, right? All of that forever. Think about a high resolution photo, a digital negative that you can compress into a JPEG, and it still has the image. I was exporting some images last night from my phone, Lightroom on my phone. There were pictures of my son's basketball game, and I wanted to make sure I shared them with our friends and the other parents from the team. And when I was exporting them, I realized I had my export settings set to maximum, and so why is this taking so long? And each file was 30 megabytes or whatever. That was far too much for the purposes of the sharing. So I canceled it, went back, did it small, did it again, and a much more reasonable 5 megabyte or something file size. But the picture was legible. You could still see that core story of that move in the game that kid was making. Now, you couldn't do exactly the same things with that file, right? You couldn't blow that up and put it on a billboard, for example. And the same goes with your business, right? You do need to have the high resolution spine narrative of your business so that you can use it for all the different purposes. But it needs to be able to compress, and it needs to be legible. So that's the first one. That's the first trigger that we look for. Is this legible? Can you compress this? The next one is delegation. We kind of talked a little bit about this already, but effectively it's like, does it travel, right? When you're not in the room, if you go and speak to 3 different employees right now, somebody in sales, somebody in marketing, somebody in engineering, and you ask them to describe the company in 30 seconds, they all say the same thing, right? Because if they don't, then you're failing at delegating that story out, right? And you need to be able to delegate it. You need to be able to have your presence land when you're not in the room. You don't want to be a dependency every single time. So that's the second trigger that we look for. And then one that I'm particularly excited about is decision leak. Is making decisions requires inputs, right? Even if you've got a menu in front of you. So why might you struggle to choose from a menu? We've all been there, right? Maybe it's, oh, I really like the sound of the burger, but I didn't work out today, so I don't know if I can justify it, but I really would like it. But then, so I probably should get a salad, but I don't know which of these salads is sounding particularly good to me today. And so, well, maybe there's a third option. Maybe I can get the fish. You haven't gone into that. You haven't gone into looking at the menu with a clear understanding of where you are today. And that's fine. That happens. This is a natural thing that happens, right? You can do something about it though. So the next time you're going out to a restaurant, before you get to the restaurant, you don't even have to know what the restaurant is. But imagine that you are going out to your favorite restaurant. Rather than thinking about all the delicious foods that they have, think about how you feel about your body and your life today. Do you feel energized? Have you been working hard? That is going to set you up for that decision, right? That is going to set you up to be tight on that decision. If the delegation aspect is about other people, then the decision leak starts with you. It helps you as a leader keep your decisions tight and focused. And when you add that to the other things we talk about, if it's legible, right? If it can scale with the delegation, then the rest of the team can make the right decisions because you've set them up for that kind of success, right? And if you don't have it, then it's going to lead to thrash, right? It's going to lead to thrash around features, ideal customer profile. I mean, one of the things that's every company goes through is thinking through what are the pains, what are the things that we do that solve that pain, like this list of features that we can do. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, which one of those things do we talk about, right? I remember when the latest iPhone was launched, and honestly, I did buy the latest one, and I bought it, funnily enough, for the one of the reasons why people were bashing it. And they were talking about the top part of it, the island, and how much time that Apple spent on talking about this feature and how unlike Apple's storytelling of the past that it was. And as much as I was also observant and critical of that, it worked for me. Why did it work for me? Because that, when my phone was getting hot last night because it was doing all those exports at too high a resolution, it was able to stay cooler than my previous phone, right? And then there's a whole bunch of other things that comes with that. But the point being is, which things do we talk about, right? Do we talk about features? Who are we talking to, and what do they want to hear? So maybe right now Apple are going after me as our ideal customer profile, somebody that is very hesitant to actually take that next step, to make that next upgrade, who was perfectly happy with the 14, I think it was, 14 Pro. The same thing happens, whether you're feature focused or you're pain focused or benefit focused or story focused, whatever you are, right? And that's the power of having your narrative all sorted out. And when you're the only person who's driving that and there's 10 people on the team, you can take that load. But when there's 70 people on the team, you need a way to scale, right? And so that is what I am obsessed with connecting to. And so we take all of these things, and you'll see some other stuff that's going to pop up on the screen here when I do some screen sharing here in a second. That is what we're applying to our web teardowns. Okay. You may recall one of our previous teardowns, and we have the GPT, right? And it starts off by looking at how coherent, how individual focused is the company that we're talking to. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull up a screen share. Do the screen share. Okay. So hopefully you can see that. Don't worry, I've not gone, I'm still here. Do it this way. A good little trick there is if you're doing a screen share, you drag and drop which one's being focused on. As I have to look off to the left here, the screen that this is on, or rather the restream, which is what we use. It'll look like I'm looking at the screen for you. Cool. Okay. So here we go. Here's our teardown, GPT. Now what this is trained on all of that core human story stuff. That's where it's going to start looking. And it's going to see how engaging is a website from a human perspective, right? So if we go, we're going to look for Common Room, Seattle. Okay, so this is the company that we're going to have a look at today. Pipeline has a new equation. Okay, so here we've got stuff like know who to target, when to engage, how to convert with the most informed go-to-market AI. Let's scroll down. Add prospects to outbound campaigns, enriching contacts, hyperscalers. To enterprise, we give thousands of GTM teams an unfair pipeline advantage. Okay, so some customer evidence. So one of the things we've done in the past, and that we still can't help ourselves from doing a little bit, is looking at the human aspect. Like, are we talking to a person? Like, are we talking to the emotional burden that their target market is going to be under? Because that will enable, if you do it properly, and you are doing it, that will enable you getting into that connection with somebody when they come to the website, looking at, like, are they new to the category? Are they shopping around and they already know what they're looking for? And making sure that you're engaging with them. And so we'll see what that pops up like in the GPT as we drop it in. So we'll say, one of the challenges that we have with any GPT, and you need to make sure that you're aware of it, is it might look at a cached version of the site. So because of that, it's a good idea to also do screenshots. So we'll go ahead and do that as well. So we'll say, this is the site we want to do a teardown for. Let's start with your initial impressions. I've included the screenshot above the fold in case of any caching issues. Let me know if what you see is the same. If not, I can screenshot more of the site. Okay, so we're going to set this to work. It's doing its thing. It's reading the resource documents that we've put in the GPT. And it's going to give us that first view of how well is the website performing. But a couple other things while it's doing that it's always really useful to do, like thinking about this as your own site, for example. Go ahead and have a look at stuff like, go look at your product pages, right? So what happens if we go here? Like, what are we saying? Every buying signal from anywhere, all in one place. What does solution say? RevOps, signals, enrichment, AI, SDRs all in one place. If you think this has got a bit of a, almost like a community feel, like a Reddit feel to it, the different kind of sub-communities, it's because the Common Room team have a background in a lot of community work. And in fact, the company started off more in that, and they've been pivoting into this, more into data, more things like you would have seen with Apollo, Zoom Info, Clay, that kind of stuff. And what are they saying that their clients or their customers have benefited from? More meetings per rep, more pipeline, more meetings booked. Okay, so this is something that anybody that's run a business will have received a lot of spam about as well, right? Or a lot of unsolicited emails. Because you care about growing the business and you become a target for folks who've got services that they want to sell and people who think they can help you. Common Room unifies every customer touch point, from repro activity to product usage to engagement on user forums and social. Not just that, we're able to identify economic buyers and target accounts through all the noise. It's been an absolute game changer for how we run go-to-market. So one of the things that we'll see in the GPT outputs is it's going to be stuff like, if you take a customer example, which we didn't ask it to do, it's going to see that, it would see this. If I take this and was to do a screenshot, it will say, we're seeing a lot of feature-based stuff. We're not seeing like what was keeping these folks up at night. And this is a problem that I've seen time immemorial for businesses, and that is, what should we show in our customer evidence? And it's very easy to fall into the trap to think that you need to show everybody's using all the features, right? That's not to say that shouldn't happen. Remember, it takes more than one tool to run a business, and it takes more than one message about how your customers benefit to convince other potential buyers. These types of messages work well for late stage buyers, late funnel, right? Where you know the category, you know what you're looking to do, and you're rationalizing, right? You're looking to, does it do this, and does it do it well, right? And that is something that you need to satisfy, right? You want to make sure you close that loop so you can close that sale. The problem is if you've been delegated to go and figure out, quote unquote, how to do this stuff from your CEO, and you stumble into Common Room or Clay or somebody else, how do you differentiate, right? And that is when we start to say, okay, well, what was keeping Andy up at night, right? What type of emotional strain was Nicholas under? So we'll take the screenshot, say, take a look at this and provide feedback on the customer stories and the upside opportunity. Okay, so whilst it's doing that, we'll go ahead and have a look at what it came up with. So let's see, it's checked to see the same hero pipeline is in the equation. As had you know who to target, when to engage. Okay, I've loaded and internalized. Okay, above the fold, pipeline as a new equation, know who to target. Okay. Physical sensation level, weak. Evidence, no body language, no late night dread, tight chest. So we're not connecting to the humans. Human difficulty identified, it's generic, right? And that's the first step, is get in that head in the right direction, and then get more specific. Evidence to that statement, know who to target, what to do, right? Generic. There's no live pain, no mention of signal, spend, messy CRM, and so on and so forth. Relief made tangible. So was there a promise? Is there a payoff to that promise? 3 AM pipeline panic. Market transformation context, company focused, most informed GTM AI centers around the vendor's capability. And this is classic. I mean, this is something we as Go Narrative have to make sure that we're not just focused on the craft of what we do, but how much we understand the challenges that you're experiencing as a founder and how we can help you with that and how we can show you that we can help you with that, right? And that common room of falling into that challenge here. What's missing, naming the sufferer, right? We didn't see that individual called out, that role even, describing what's happening in the body. So we've got all these ideas, right? So this is all really important, fundamental story-based communication stuff that there's clearly an opportunity to level up on here. And as I've always said in these, it's hard running a company's website because you do have to think about the different targets, right? You do have to think about the different stages of the funnel, and you are under a lot of pressure to prove certain things to certain people. Maybe your CEO of Common Room, the founder, has told you that she wants to, Linda wants to see X, Y, and Z, and maybe the CTO, Viraj, has put some other requests on you, and you're kind of like, we've got all these kind of balls that you're juggling, and it can be hard to put all that together into a website. So I get it. I've run websites. We run a website. I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and it's a known challenge. Okay, we've also thrown the stories up here because we're talking about them. I'll just quickly share a few points on here. So obviously the logos, what's missing? Again, no body level pain. No one says what it felt like. Forecast not, Slack fire drill. None of these these aspects of it are showing up. Reply rate. When we start thinking about measuring it, meetings booked. Nearly zero numbers in there. Long paragraphs of vendor speak. Unified touch points, AI agent. I've run customer evidence for some of the biggest companies in the world, and I know what it's like to be under the pressure to make all the product groups happy with having all the features represented. Doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And again, doesn't mean that this is the right place to do it, right? So opportunities to do things differently. And then it's come up with some micro teardown. So that's all great. Okay. What I wanted to show you next though is, let's have a look at some of those things that we were talking about, right? So some of these pains that we were talking about earlier. And we talked about legibility, we talked about delegation, decision leak, some of the stuff I didn't share with you, sort of the next click down, decisions require founder presence to hold. These are the signals that we're looking for, right? Repeated debates framed as alignment. Does that sound familiar? Strategy described differently by the different teams, multiple ICPs, different justifications, so on and so forth. Hedging the bet, right? And then the tension that comes out of, we talked about legibility, delegation, decision leak. The tension that comes out of that, right? From a growth perspective, an identity perspective, and a coherence perspective. So, scaling faster than the story can hold, who you are versus who you're becoming. Common Room, a good example of that, as we mentioned, of the pivot. And then internal alignment, breaking down under pressure. Now for Series A in particular, you should be thinking about, so these guys are Series B. There's still a lot of interest and geeking out that we do in them, both above and below. Our focus area in Series A, post-Series A firms, is the ability for your story to stay coherent as it leaves your mouth, hits the person in the room, and travels. Why is that important? Well, let's say you're speaking to an investor. It's probably not going to be just up to that particular person in that room from that firm that's going to make the decision. Now, you want to woo them, you want to have them impressed and confident, right? Of course, these are all things that you want to make sure you're telling the story in a compelling way and engaging with them and giving them the call to action and all of that classic stuff that you know to be true. But where I see the problem crop up all the time is that coherence sticking through them as a node out into the people they need to communicate it to, right? So when they go back to the office at the VC firm or whoever it happens to be, are they continuing to say the things in the way that you want them to say it? And if you just said a whole smorgasbord of hedging, You've given them a smorgasbord of things to pick from, let alone what their own opinions and impressions are going to be. And as with so many things in life, less is more. Getting this pared down, getting it focused is key. And then we look at overloaded and shameful beliefs. So I'm going to take these now and we're going to say, okay, that's all great what we saw you say. And we're going to say, thanks. How about taking a look at the below and seeing how the site stacks up? What signals are we getting? Now, when we're doing this for a client, we're doing multiple different passes, in fact, frequently we use multiple AIs, use GPTs and standard chats within the same AI, in this case in ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude. Found Claude to be particularly good at looking across and do multiple sets of research and aggregating them together. Claude seems to do a really good job right now of doing that and has produced more usable outputs for us. It's also great to do that kind of stuff because you're able to triangulate. Are we seeing things crop up in this AI and not this AI, right? So you've got the hallucination problem. We want to make sure we squash that. And so we're not going to get that level of rigor here because we're using one instance and one focus. But so keep that in mind. But as we do that, we can start to look what might be showing through on the site. And I'm curious to see if it spots looking at what was said in the press release versus what's on the homepage, because there's often narrative tension in those and narrative load events. The reason why we talk about that load is, the more load you put on a system, the more likely it is to break. So you get some shelving, it's rated for how many pounds, and you look at the drywall anchors and how many pounds those are rated for. And an 80-pound anchor is not 160 if you've got 2, and it's not 320 if you've got 4, right? It's going to be somewhere below that. How is the shelf being loaded up? What's on the top, middle, the bottom? If you put too much on in the wrong place, even though you've done your due diligence, it could break. So the same happens with a business and what's being said in the business. If your salespeople and your internal teams and your engineering teams and what's on this page of the website and that page of the website are all saying different things, you're going to get in trouble. So here we go, some narrative load events here, what's observed or inferable, product expansion. So like I mentioned earlier, community data signals to broad customer intelligence. GTM motion has been broadened. Public commitment is the pipeline has a new equation. Category level claim. But what we do see and what we saw, we've looked at these folks. They're not currently a client, but we have looked at them in more detail. And one of the things we see is they talk about clay. And as soon as you start talking about your competition to define a new category that you're trying to create, you've lost, right? You need to be able to form the belief system that is going to be believed by your customers. And if you're relying on your competition, that's not going to work. So we've got some decay signals here. So let's see, the headline saying it's vague, failure mode, legibility, it's not sticking. And remember, we talked about compression as well. So it's like when it's been compressed and the iterations it's gone through, clearly something's is not working there. The pipeline has a new equation. How does that, if we take that and the informed GTM ATI, how does that relate to customer intelligence, for example? Is pipeline the connection? Is GTM the connection? And why? And so those are just 2 connection points I can see here on the page that do connect. But is that happening on what's being talked about on the product pages, service pages, community pages, right? That will reveal more and more of the load, the potential load. GTM motion is broadened. We talked about that. Oh yes, we talked about this. So multiple ICPs without visible trade-offs, message drift across artifacts, hero, GTM AI stories equal consolidation. Those are two different things, right? Having signals in one place and then hero GTM. I guess you could argue saying that kind of like with silver platter, hero, it's easy to be, if you haven't got a clear understanding of what you believe you want the business to be focused on, it's easy to end up getting into what I would characterize as reasonable discussions with unreasonable outcomes. So I could imagine a conversation that says, well, signals in the one place is our GTM AI hero, because it's what GTM AI, go-to-market AI, is what is bringing all those signals together in one place. It's like, okay, so if that's the case, then is silver platter doing the right type of lifting? And you might say, yeah, it is, because all the signals are in one place on the silver platter. Okay, but is that what we mean by silver platter? Not really. Right? Serving it up on a silver platter means it's being brought to you, which is potentially fine, right? But all the signals in one place is more like a buffet than a silver platter. And the funny thing about metaphors and analogies is we can start to expose the thinking behind them, because the reason why we have metaphors and analogies is shortcuts for thinking, shortcuts for communication, right? Shortcuts for understanding. And therefore, when you start to zero in on a potential way of saying things, ask yourself, what does it really mean, right? Get the dictionary out as well. I'm doing that all the time. Like, just with that one word, like somebody was saying something about performative politics or something, like people just being performative. It's like, well, what does that actually mean? Well, it means that basically what you're saying matches up with what you're doing. And so it's like, well, is that a bad thing? It's saying performative is bad, but actually it's a good thing. So understanding what the true meaning is important, because if you don't know what that is, how are the rest of your team going to know? If you don't have a strong opinion rooted in rigor that you've done the due diligence on and then written it down, if you haven't done that, how is anybody going to know? Everybody's going to be guessing, and that's where you get that load starts to build, that illegibility starts to crop up, drift starts to happen, right? Narrative drift, as I would call it. And then, so kind of zeroing in on a few things there, looking at what they're trying to do, like we're going to go into that, but these are some other aspects. Let's see what else looks some kind of juicy you want to jump into. Well, let's have a look at where the taxes are showing up. So decision tax, delegation tax, eligibility tax. This is probably going to reflect what we just said. So prospect must pick their own role and use case. There's no role switch or choose your job fork. Evaluation skills, it's all kind of offered up there, right? And this is that community vibe that I mentioned earlier. Delegation, sales has to explain what GTM AI actually does for the team. It's funny that it says that, because that's exactly what I was thinking through as I was seeking to describe it to you. It was like, well, what do they mean by GTM AI, right? The story doesn't travel unaided. If the story doesn't travel unaided, you have not effectively delegated. Legibility tax, new equation plus GTM AI does not result in a 7-word pass-alongable idea. A memory doesn't form. So remember, it was the pipeline has a new equation. Pipeline has a new equation. I mean, one of the questions I'd want to ask is, why do you say equation? What is the meaning for your audience when you say equation? Or is it a concept you've developed, right? I've got ideas about why they might be doing that, but I don't know the answer to that. So when you say pipeline has a new equation, if I don't know what you mean by that, then it makes it impossible for me to then know how to combine GTM AI to come up with something that's memorable. So I would have to guess, right? So if I could guess, I could say, well, maybe we say that it's not audience specific. Maybe we say it's general. And we say equation. One of the beauties of learning maths as a child isn't so much using algebra every day in your life, but is thinking about the equation of things. What happens if this element, this factor, isn't in the equation, or if it's much bigger or much smaller? Just like our menu decision story earlier, right? If you are missing the how do I feel about my body today when you go out for dinner and you have to pick from a menu, you're not set up to solve the equation, right? So in this case, pipeline has a new equation. So the way you do pipeline, the way it happens, the way that it's always happened, has always was one equation. That's now changed. Okay? So if we go with that, what are the implications? Well, one of them is, are you telling me what I was doing was wrong? What if I was finding success there? Now I'm arguing with you. Now I'm getting rational, and you've broken my ability to just believe you. That's one that jumps out at me. You might say, Linda might say, that is the case, and the research shows it. Okay, if that's the case, then fair enough. So if we take the pipeline as an equation, then we think about the go-to-market AI. So are we now saying that go-to-market AI is a new equation? Is that what it is? Or is it a new factor in the equation? Is the equation completely different, or is it slightly different? Right? I would argue and imagine that the response to that would be, well, it's not completely different. Some of the factors are the same, but now you're working with common room, and so some of the equation has changed. So it's a new equation, but it's not completely new, and it's go-to-market AI. So we're trying to define go-to-market AI as a category. I think that's what common room are most likely trying to do here, and therefore we're trying to add these things together. It looked like it was saying, again, Linda, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but it looked like we were saying that there's multiple things. So then it begs the question, why we as common room, if I'm speaking from their perspective, why did we have these two things rather than one thing? If pipeline has a new equation because it's different, and it's different because of go-to-market AI, so it's changed some of the equation, can we say something holistic that means? And I bet if I had Linda here in the room, Linda Leanne, CEO and co-founder, I bet she would be able to articulate what she means, what she believes, and how that translates into the mission for the company, her vision for the next horizon. And that's the problem, right? She's not in the room. And we can see from the website that there's pieces that don't fit together when we sit down and we start asking questions about it. And the problem is I'm just Matthew Woodget looking at the website, right? One person, and I'm already doing this. What happens? And Go Narrative could be a customer as well. Like this could be something that we could add to our marketing operations picture. We've used Clay, we've used Apollo, and if I'm asking these questions, and if I can rapidly show you why there is some discrepancy and lack of clarity that doesn't enable me to move forward, you can imagine that I'm probably not alone. And it's that rational aspect again, right? As soon as you get people start debating you've lost, right? A metaphor here would be like a founder standing up in front of a room. Imagine you're at a pitch competition, and you make a claim, make a statement. You might maybe even tell the story. And as you do that, within your assertion, shall we say, there is a claim. And the entire audience, or a lot of the audience pick up on the claim and disagree with it. For example, in this case, it would be pipeline has a new equation. Let's say that significant chunk of the audience all have that response. What do you mean? What is the new equation? How is it different? What parts of what I'm doing today are wrong? You just lost that entire slice of the audience. Why? They're no longer listening to you. They're formulating a response in an argument to you. Now, two things are happening. One is they're not fully listening to you, so you're not getting any other parts of your message across that could be vital to making your point. That's one. And the second thing is you have just created a rational conversation rather than an emotional conversation. And the third thing that happens is you detect that. As the presenter in the audience, you see the looks on people's faces, you see the crossed arms, right? The body language is starting to tell you something. And maybe even there's a question that comes up. What do? You then fall into the same trap. You fall into the trap of falling into the argument. So you start rationalizing against their rationalizing. You might even now go off script, thinking that you need to add this, add that to try and soothe the audience. Before you know it, more of the audience are seeing more holes in what you've said, because now you'll pick up going into all these details, all these rational things. And I'm realizing that wasn't fully centered on the screen there. So that is some examples of how this stuff can go sideways so quickly. And the decisions for the website in this case have to be the decisions that you want to be made in the way that you want them to be made. Look, you hire smart people for good reason. And you want them to be able to make decisions. The problem is, if you don't give them the right tools, and by that I mean in your tools that you give them, that you don't include a very clear strategic narrative, you are not giving them what they need to make those decisions. This is not about positioning. This is not about product positioning. Product positioning is a debate about which pains and which proofs, often features, company properties, could be culture, are the things that we should put forth into the market for the market we're going after. And we used to do a lot of positioning work. I have done a lot of positioning work in my years back in my product marketing days. And the problem with positioning, I've seen positioning get launched and then need an immediate refresh. We were hired to do a refresh for a team at Microsoft, and this is one out of many that we used to do when we used to focus on this type of work. But this one particular team, they didn't know what they stood for, what they meant, they didn't know who their ICP was. They didn't know what the pains of the ICP were. They wanted to do a refresh on their existing positioning messaging framework, or messaging positioning framework, depending on what school of letter order you are in. And it was just it was the worst, possibly the worst positioning project that we ever did. In fact, it made me realize and see clearly the positioning projects we'd done that had gone well, but then just did not land within the organization. In so many cases, in the cases where they did land, the amount of friction and inertia that the organization had around what it wanted to say. And I saw this when I was an employee in product marketing at Microsoft, and also in partner channel at Intel. We put materials together to give them to the field, and then the field sometimes wouldn't use them. They'd use some old stuff. And it's like, why are they not using it? It's like, well, they just didn't believe. They were not seeing what was being provided to them as being what they thought their marching orders were, what they had heard from the sales leadership team at the sales kickoff, because all of these things were disconnected. It's the sort of thing that can happen in a big company, of course, but it's even more important in some ways in a big company, because the ability for the executives to be in the room or to have their fingerprints on everything is smaller and smaller, right? And as a founder who's growing their company, now Series A, 50 to 75 people, hopefully pushing to like 100, 200 people, see how this problem can compound and can compound even more. And if you spend all your time only thinking about who's our ideal customer, what are their pains today, and what does our product do, we all know that stuff changes, right? It shifts. Markets change, people change, like new things get invented that remove other types of pain. And it's a trap that you can just keep falling into. Now, I'm not completely and utterly throwing positioning under the bus, but what I will say is if you do not have a clear narrative spine from the people who are responsible for ultimately calling the shots of the company and leading what they want that company to be, right? Think about it, as a founder, you have a vision and you have a belief that you want to change the world in a certain way, and you develop a vision, you build your mission. You need to make sure that that motivation and that clarity that you have has a way of traveling beyond you. And that is why Narrative Accelerator is what we do, right? It's 4 to 6 weeks, sit down, go in, we dig into all that passion is, that why that's driving the business, and understand all of that, as well as the what and the how, with the knowledge that the what and the how are going to keep misfiring, and they will, and they do, until you have that core why. It's why I'm a why certified coach as well, because when you understand what that why aspect is, when you understand the stories that have driven the founding team, when you understand the stories the company has been through in the past couple of years, you take all of those things together, you're able to figure out, we're able to figure out what that red line thread is that needs to be pulled together and distilled and encoded so that it can be repeated and it can be used. And when you do that, your legibility problems go away. Suddenly, everything's legible. Your decision-making is facilitated across the organization. You're able to delegate and have people, whether it's the decisions or the story you're trying to tell itself, you're able to have that travel beyond you. And that's why when we were looking today at Common Room, we were really looking for those aspects of how are they coming across on the website? How are they coming across on the different parts of the website? This is that company, right? We do this every Friday. That company's best foot forward, right? And what are investors going to think when they come and they look at it, right? Or maybe you're going for acquisition as well. And there's going for acquisition and there's going for acquisition, if you know what I mean, right? So how much you're able to get out of this acquisition. And then, of course, is your company, as it grows, able to keep telling the same story? Now, you might say 12 months later, come back, see where the journey we've been on, what we might need to tweak. Our identity is still the same, right? And so that's going to stay the same, but some of this growth has forced this and that kind of change, and we're going to tune this and tweak this part of the narrative, and we're going to keep it coherent, right? And that's what you used to do as a founder. Well, you're still trying to do it, but you used to do it, and with a smaller team, it traveled naturally. And now you have to have that story tell itself when you're not in the room. That is where the magic happens. And that is one of the many tools that you as a leader need to make sure that you're utilizing in your business. So this has been super fun, super exciting. Come back next week for another teardown. We'll look at some more legibility, some more legibility and illegibility perhaps. We'll look at some decision leak, and we'll ask ourselves if the delegation of the core purpose and why this company is landing through what we're seeing it say out there on the World Wide Web and everything that comes along with it. Thank you so much. Feel free to reach out. I'm realizing that I've been so focused on you that there we go. Any comments? What do you mean by decision leak? Decision leak is when the decisions that are getting made aren't always the right decision. And so if you think about a container which has got your liquid in it and it starts leaking, right? It means that you're not keeping those decisions in the container. It's not being passed around and accessible as that liquid because it's leaking out. And so when somebody goes to go get the container, there's nothing in it, right? And so that's the metaphor. And if you flip the metaphor around, it's that other decisions are leaking in. So you've got this particular focus that you want, right? And these other areas of focus start coming in. Oh, maybe the ICP is more like this. You hire a new VP and the new VP says, you say you've been doing it this way forever. Well, you hired me to shake things up. And what about this? And it's like, oh, well, that sounds reasonable. Maybe we should start doing that on the website or whatever it happens to be. So that's it. Decision leak. And I'd probably encourage you to think about the second one's probably an easier way of viewing it. So what's a problem you see with investor language that doesn't match customer language, and why does it matter? That's an interesting question, because you could think of investors and customers as being very different, right? And they are in many ways. And what they need to hear is different in many ways. Like customers have a specific problem and they want to believe that you can help them solve that problem, right? An investor wants to believe that at scale, right? Especially as you're looking as your Series A going for Series B. You've proved you understand how to solve this problem. Now show me you know how to go and do this at scale to more ICPs or to expanded markets or to expand the product to do it better or to solve an adjacent problem as a part of it that you know is very important for the audience because you know this market so well and you can demonstrate how that's going to result in growth. It's going to bring my investment to fruition, make it worthwhile that I did the investment. So in that sense, and the question about investor language doesn't match customer language, you will say things differently to customers than you will to investors and vice versa. However, and this is important, your core belief needs to come through, right? It has to be coherent, right? And one of my favorite stories from Hollywood was the pitch for the logline pitch for Alien, and it's like Jaws in space. It's like movie being referred by another movie, right? You've got Jaws, you've got this new one, so it's cinema, it's tapping into what the people know about who on the receiving end, in this case the investors, and very quickly like imparts all of the fear and the terror that people had about Jaws, people not getting into the sea for years, all this kind of stuff. And then like that for space, this abstract thing, it's very different, kind of sci-fi kind of thing, but it's going to create that kind of terror, like but for the night sky, if you will, and the thought of what could be out there. And it's coherent, right? It makes sense, it resonates, it lands, and it ends up, even though that was a pitch to investors effectively, that the message to customers ends up being things like, in space nobody can hear you scream. That's coherent with it's like Jaws in space, right? The tension in the movie, the product, right? The features that you're getting as a person who's consuming that are of that caliber, of that terror, right? So it's all coherent. And so what you say to investors, what you say to customers has to be coherent with itself, even if it is saying different things practically, right? So that's what we mean by that. So some great questions. Thank you so much. We'll leave we'll pop this up here at the end so you can see, go to our website. You can book some time with us to do a narrative diagnostic to find out where your decisions are leaking, where your coherence is leaking, or where you're not being coherent. And that's one of the best ways to get a hold of us, gnhelp@gonarrative.com. You can also reach out, shoot an email. And I am so grateful for you joining today. Thank you so much. And whether you put a comment down below on LinkedIn or shoot a DM or shoot an email, I want to hear what coherence problems you're running into. I want to hear where you feel like your decisions aren't making it across the organization. I want to hear where you feel like your legibility could be better. And I can't wait to hear what those are, because I love hearing your stories, and I love seeing how we can point you in the right direction and help shape what you're doing so that those no longer become problems that you're having. Thank you so much. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day, wonderful weekend, or wonderful whatever you're doing if you're listening to the recording. And I look forward to seeing you again here soon. Bye for now.